Hello, all you lovely and gentle folk out there. My name is Jon, and this is Mustache and Minis, and today we truly are painting a mini. Now, Legion Imperialis is a new game from Games Workshop, and it looks interesting, it's a Warhammer 40k epic, everybody knows what this is if you've been in the scene long enough. It's really, really small scale miniatures, and I was, curious about it, let's call it that. But I was not curious enough to buy the entire thing or buy boxes and random stuff here and there from it, so I decided to print out a little bit from it. A friend of mine sent me some files and I used my new 3D printer. I am not sponsored, which is a shame, but it's the Anycubic M5S, so it's a 12K resin printer, which has a lot of details, and therefore for 6 to 8 millimeter scale minis, it's quite good. So I printed out a few Marines and I decided to try and paint a couple of them up just to see how it is to paint something this tiny and this small. Let's just jump in and see how I did. Now, painting something this tiny poses a slew of its own unique problems. Details are not as important, because if you're playing this scale, you will more likely than not be fielding an exuberant number of models, and the sea of tiny warriors will fade into a blob of color. But still, they do need that color, and a bit of detail, otherwise you can just have 6mm dabs of clay on the base and call it done. I'm going for an Imperial Fist, as they are simple to paint and stand out. It also helps that I have a large one and a regular-sized one on my shelf, and this tiny little bloke is similar in scale to the regular Marine, as the regular Marine is to the big one. Not an exact match, but close enough for it to be a little bit of fun. I started by priming it as per usual in a whitish color for this kind of light-colored paint job, and then give it a once-over with hot pink. I'm using ink because it's better in this case, in my opinion. This is no new news, as it has been seen both here on my channel and on many other channels that pink can be a great starting point for yellow, especially with an airbrush that I am of course utilizing in this case. Now, the biggest issue with painting these guys, since I'm just trying them out, is that I only had 5 of them, and the issue was to have have little enough of the paint in the airbrush, as I don't want to waste overly too much paint. The zenithal is done with white paint again, and this has to be done in a quite careful method, as it does not take too much to cover the mini, but we want a bit of pink in the shadows and the recesses, so spraying too aggressively will just cover it. But once that is done and dried, it's just a question of covering the mini in yellow. I'm using yellow ink again, mainly because it has quite a lot of pigment, and it will allow the pink to taint it from underneath. And most important of all is it is thin, so it does not clog up the tiny details. Okay, we have paint on the Marine, but he is still a bit too much of just a yellow blob. So I thinned out some agrax as a test to see how much it would seep into the recess, and it did a bit. The inks have a lesser surface tension than paint, so the shade will flow a bit better, but I was not happy with the lack of detail, so I will come back to that again later. For the trim on his pauldrons and his gun casing and just a few bits here and there, I grabbed a fine-ish brush and painted that delicately, and even added a tiny bit of freehand on the shoulder. Why? Because I am that dense. If I was painting these by the hundreds, this freehand step I would most likely skip entirely. A bit of metallic on the bolter muscle and some on the backpack, and technically this little guy's done. He's got 3 colors, and you can feel them, but he's not really done. I still felt that he was a bit too blobby. So I went in again with non-oil now, and just to try and get some details into him. A little bit of lines here and there, so he looks a little bit more segmented, if you will. And yeah, it was much better. It takes no time to paint a single guy like this, and I can't imagine it takes a long time to paint them by the dozen, and it is kind of fun to do these tiny little killing machines. But will I paint more of them? Maybe, who knows? Perhaps I can finally get a full army going in something by having the army just super tiny. Now this was quite a lot different than what I'm usually painting. I'm usually painting the regular scale models, or this and that. Nothing this really tiny, and it's quite a fun experiment, and I might do more of it. And you can make really cool, interesting dioramas, which I'm thinking doing something grandiose on a small scale for something, just for fun maybe. But before we take a look at the tiny little guy, I would like to mention all the stuff below. We have links to various tidbits. We have a like and a share and a subscribe button like always. And also my Creature Caster affiliate store. I would wholeheartedly recommend shopping something from there, mainly because there are cool models and the prices are fairly decent. And by going into the affiliate store, by clicking the link below, using this code, you get a slight discount, I get a little bit of kickback, and they get a little bit of business. Everybody sounds happy, does it not? Also, again, Anikubic, come on, sponsor me, come on, I like 3D printing. Bring me the stuff. Well, that's probably not going to work, but let's take a look at the little yellow guy with a slightly bigger yellow guy with an even more bigger yellow guy and see how they all compare. I've been young, you've been spectacular. Let the colors flow. Farewell.